Morning, Paul. It's great to see you, my man, from some international destination. I thought what we'd talk about today, or my suggestion, which you kindly thought was a good idea, was to talk about what does it mean and what's the value in being a Christian in the current climate, should we be overt about it or should we be covert about it? So over to you. Really look forward to what you've got to say, and we can have a bit of a discussion about it.
There's kind of two questions in there, and I think I think you're addressing more the second one. I mean, the value of being a Christian is huge. Do we really need to get into that? I can if you like. I mean, to me, it was just, it's absolutely life changing. I was like a hedonistic, brave cocaine addict until I came into recovery and started living my life along spiritual principles.
Yeah,
and it was absolutely life changing to do that. And then, but you're kind of like, you're kind of like wandering around in the dark at that point. It's like you've got an iPhone, but all you can do is actually make calls and maybe use Google Maps and sort of, which is very helpful if you're never able to do that before. But the sort of like changing my higher power to, to a triune God was sort of like gave me all the apps that, it's everything. It just opens up a whole other dimension.
Yeah.
And certainly in times like this, and it does seem as if we're entering a very difficult phase, certainly in Europe, what it does is it gives you, I'd pick one big thing, it gives you an antidote to fear. Fear is vision without hope. And the Christian story is all about hope.
Yeah.
So that's the very, very short answer to, why you should be a Christian. How you should communicate that. Well, if I was, if we were doing this as a panel discussion in front of a lot of very important people, what I would have done is I would have dug up a clip of Ben Shapiro, who actually spoke about this. How open should you be in your faith? And he just covered it beautifully. And I would have just taken notes, maybe given him a credit and just riffed off that. Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, it really depends on the situation. Part of, for me, I'll speak for myself because I don't want to speak for the church. For me, part of being a Christian is being a demonstration, and that's the tough part. That's why it's an easy thing. I think, people often say, I want to see a sermon, not hear one. So I think yes. in how you live, act, and have your being, you have to demonstrate the Christian virtues. I think that's most important. And there's no, in a way that no one would know, what your faith is, or even if you have one. But I think, but then after that, I think it really, really depends upon the situation. For me, I have been relatively candid about the fact that I'm in recovery and in my faith. And I don't necessarily think that's because I'm such a good guy. I mean, I score very low for agreeableness. I'm very competitive. I'm quite combative. So for me, it's kind of like, maybe I'm not necessarily even doing it for the right reasons. I think that, I think okay, let's put it this way. I think it's a general principle. It's better to address a problem through principles than outcomes, because you can control the principles that you're using. You can't necessarily control the outcomes. Yeah. And Christianity is just it's the whole truth. It's the defining principles for the universe.
Yeah.
How candid you are about that, I don't know. It really depends. I mean, it's like, it's very. I don't think I've ever actually. Well, unless you're talking to another Christian, you can't actually get them. You can't actually say, "Well, why should I do it?" You say, "Well, because the Bible says so." Now, a Christian will go, "Okay, fine. It's a fair cop. I'll do it." another Christian, anyone else will just say, yeah, well, nah.
Yeah.
That's an appeal to an authority that I don't respect. So I don't know. I think you've just got to pick your battles. But I think for me, the overriding thing is to be a city on a hill.
Yeah.
To be the salt of the earth. To try and be the person to be an attractor for my faith, without necessarily getting in the weeds, because it's like having a calibration about when is a good opportunity for evangelism. There are many opportunities for evangelism, and the more you do it, the better your instinct becomes about it, even if you do make mistakes from time to time. But I don't know. I sort of like, I do wear, I sort of wear I actually wear a sword, which everyone thinks is a cross, and I actually bought it because I actually thought it was a cross. So I think an item of jewelry is helpful. If I see someone wearing a cross, I kind of like that. I'm sort of like, I'll be more prone to sort of ask them about their faith. But so, for me, it's like, I like talking about my faith. And so I am more prone to do it more often. I'm also lucky enough to have some amazing, of whom you are one. I have some great mentors. I have some great peers. I have some amazing pastors. I've had wonderful spiritual directors. So I'm kind of confident about talking about it. And of course, the great thing is, being in 12-step recovery, is I do understand how you can apply spiritual principles to practical problems, and how that works, because the 12 steps is eminently practical. So I would really say it's just case by case basis. But I try and I try and set the example that Christ would want me to set, and fail 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Thank you. I think you pointed out that sometimes as well, I think it's quite challenging to operate or be motivated. You mentioned that this morning. I think that's really important, because I think where do we find our strength is a very big challenge at the moment, because if you look at what's happening, it's utterly overwhelming. And I think the challenge with that as a Christian, well, I can only speak as a Christian. I suppose I could speak as a non-Christian before as a Christian, but as speaking as a Christian, for me, my spiritual well-being is like my dial, in terms of doing right. What do I see? What am I going to do about it? Without that spiritual basis, I think you're really in a dodgy territory. And even today, I was having a discussion with somebody who's, talking about Russian gas and stuff, and shouldn't we fudge it? And I said, no, we shouldn't fudge it. And certainly with my background in turnaround, I can see the unadulterated crisis that we are facing. And you asked me before we started this call, how do I see the European gas situation? It is a monumental crisis, far worse than COVID, Paul. If there's one thing that's going to tip the entire UK economy over the edge, it's that. And so I think that, and how do we respond to that? So I'm responding to that quite boldly, by setting up a cohort and I know a lot of very good people to address this, to actually take a lead in terms of turning the UK around. And where the hell do I get that strength from? Why the hell, do I feel confident enough to do that? And partly it's because of the situations I've been in, Paul, and the skills I've developed, but it's absolutely down to my faith. So it comes down to two things, and I talk about this on MBA programs, grace and love, because unless you can put the past behind you, the past overwhelms you, and without the love to give people opportunities, moving forwards, you're really rather stuck. And I think it comes down to some really, the flip side of that as a non-Christian, I think, is selfishness, to bury your head and, just look after yourself. But that's a sure way to collapse a business. I've proven that lots of times. And the first chapter of the Winning Thinking program is absolutely about putting other people first, because that's when it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You might think that's counterintuitive, Paul, but if you put other people first, what does it feel like for other people to put you first, right? So it's a very self-fulfilling thing and very practical. I think the other thing is, how do you spot bullshit as well, frankly? What?
Yeah,
I think that's a spiritual thing. It's a sort of a right or wrong
it's discernment. It's discernment. It's a gift.
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
gift.
And where the hell do you get that from? I mean, you come, I'm in no doubt whatsoever that's a spiritual thing, and it's definitely got a lot to do with my faith. And it's not, you've got a whole list of things: crypto, big tech, social media. I'm having a discussion with someone at the moment about AI in education, because a good bloke thinks it's okay, and I could, so I know those sorts of things concern me. And I think it's really, in these situations, it's not just addressing the tough issues and facing the tough issues, but it's also about sticking to the plan. Because, if someone like me turns up, I can provide the clarity, I can get everything working right. But actually, it's difficult. And it's very important that we stick to the plan, and who's actually got the courage and the backbone or the strength to do that. You can see what happened to Boris Johnson after his sort of honeymoon Brexit period. It hit a bit of a bumpy road, and largely because of the woke dialogue, which is utterly demonic. He got shafted, and it's very important that we see difficult things through. And I think it comes down to what you were saying, or you were talking indirectly about, Paul, about the attractiveness of faith, or being the beacon on the hill.
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
And I think that's down
it's
to
huge, and it goes under the radar. People don't have, when people are attracted to it, they're pagan. They don't have the words for it. They're not even really necessarily aware that it's happening.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. And I think the love, if you show love for other people, which is absolutely a heart thing, and I think we should use the word love in business more, because it's definitely what's fixed you, Paul, in terms of whatever you've challenged. And it's no doubt what's fixed me as well, and it's a continuous process. We're when I say fixed, we're far from fixed, but we're on a journey. And so I think, the other side of this, I think, as well, is it's very important not to be self-righteous. The only person that was ever self-righteous was Jesus. The rest of us, frankly, are a bunch of fools who are all struggling with the same sorts of things. And I think when we're talking about some of these more challenging, postmodern, which is undoubtedly a sort of evil religion, it's very important that we maintain dialogue with people.
Yeah, I mean, but that's difficult in a culture that is collectively, its collective psyche is geared towards self-invention.
Absolutely.
And self-authority. So
yeah, it's really, really difficult. So I think but I think the alternative is very grim, because when you stop talking to people, the only alternative you've got is war or silence, both of which is really very unhealthy. And Jesus said, I mean, the one thing that is the most challenging thing that Jesus said was love your enemies. And the reason why he said that, I'm pretty sure, is even when you look at someone like Putin, the worst thing you should do is not speak to him.
No, and I think that's part of the problem, is people didn't speak to him.
Exactly.
There wasn't enough dialogue, and look what happens. I think there's a huge culpability.
Yeah.
It's like, if there's an angry bear in the neighborhood, you do something about it.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, I mean, I'll give you an example. It's like when with that group of gentlemen that you have, where we were discussing ideology and wokeism and stuff like that. When I started speaking, I sort of came out quickly and I said, look, I'm prepared to be the Christian Alex Jones here, because the view that I wanted to put into that group was a sort of like high-level Christian view about the fact that postmodernism, wokeism, feminism, homosexuality, it is the work of the demonic.
Yeah.
And that's just the view that I want to take. And so and that's the worldview that, how can I put this? That's the worldview that's the biblical view, and so that's the prism through which I look things. I just want to establish that.
Yeah.
So that was, I was just looking for an occasion where I actually sort of said, okay, I'm going to plant my flag.
Yeah. I think that's very important, Paul. I think because, I think it's well proven that we're not smart enough to make up our own set of rules. And I think what's demonic about, the postmodern thing is the systemization of doing the wrong things and creating division, systemically based on Marxism, which is basically infiltrating the structure and then creating division in the substructure and a whole raft of fronts. And, and that does give rise to silence. It gives rise to, menticide. It's the antithesis of what good looks like. And I think it's not saying actually, when you take homosexuality, for example, which is a really weird discussion and gets churches into a lot of trouble, I don't have any problem. In fact, two of the people on that call are actually homosexual. It makes no difference to me whatsoever. But that doesn't mean that I condone homosexuality. I can, and actually, do I see myself as being perfect on every front? Absolutely not. But it's about maintaining that grace and that position without being judgmental to, to have discussions with people that might do things that you might not agree with. And I think, because I, I think locally as well, it's, when you actually get down to the nitty gritty, and I think one of the problems at the moment is because of a lack of grace, people are getting really hung up on stupid little idiosyncrasies that we've all got. Because we've all got weird idiosyncrasies which pop out from time to time, and it's very easy to get hung up on those rather than be graceful and move forwards. And it's,
again, and that's a feature of social media. It's like, we can find this, like someone's tweet where they say something unguarded and get crucified it because people think that tweet defines their whole life and identity.
Yeah, and I think the thing about that dialogue as well, there's no appreciation of the person that's behind it very often. There's no interest in that person. There's no relationship with that person. It's just an opportunity to attack and share one's own self-righteousness, and it's it's very, very, very dangerous place. So I think, in essence, for me, it's about how do we Christian faith? How do we maintain a healthy, balanced perspective, regardless actually of how difficult things get, by keeping our hearts in the right place and being able to maintain love for other people. There's something about love as well, which is certainly an odd word in business, but it's also the only indestructible emotion. So your love for somebody else is indestructible, and any other emotion, anger or happiness or whatever else it might be. But the Bible talks about this, and I've noticed this actually, and that's the key to turning business around, is actually love. And that's why, because it's self-fulfilling, Paul, and it doesn't go away. So I think it really does, from a practical perspective, it really is, it's not that simple, because it requires a lot of practice. And you were talking this morning about practice and importance of, practice is very important, doing the right things and morning routines and the discipline you talked about sticking to, your video, whatever you want to do, whatever's your good routine that keeps you communicating and actually taking action as well. Your point about taking action is absolutely vital. And even though it might be imperfect, professionals stick to the discipline of doing it.
Action creates clarity.
Yeah. And it's, I think all of these things require a sort of healthy, it requires strength. It requires healthy relationships with other people. It requires healthy relationship with yourself. And to be honest, I don't know how.
Well, for me, you talked about keeping our hearts right. For me, for me to be able to do that, what I do is prayer, It's it's fellowship.
Yeah.
It's going to church. It's reading my Bible.
Yeah.
It's going to meetings. There are things I do to get that outcome. Because if I was if I was left up to my own devices, I'd never be able to do that. I need to do things that enable me to do that.
Yeah.
And by doing those things, that's what I think that's what activates the Holy Spirit in me.
Absolutely.
And if I don't do, and this is why. Look, I know it's a very blanket thing saying, but a lot of the time, this is why depressed people are depressed. It's like some people chronically, clinically depressed. Of course there are, but some people they're just depressed because they're not doing things that are healthy for them.
Yeah.
Okay, on a physical level. Okay, and so it's important to do physically healthy things, but it's also important to do spiritual healthy things.
No,
it's important to give your soul a workout on a day. In fact, it's probably more important to give your soul a workout on a daily basis than your body.
Yeah, totally. I think the other thing is as well, if you know, we've got some pretty stark choices in business. So, for example, if you look at the cyclical nature of the way empires come to pass or rise and fall, we're in a situation currently where the US, which has become the dominant empire, prior to which the UK was the dominant empire, seems like a long time ago, but it's only the middle of this century where the UK pound was the dominant reserve currency, and it was the US took over, and the US is falling and China are picking up, and I think there's some really stark choices practically which need to be taken with the right heart. Some really tough decisions to be made, but that require a sort of Christian heart type strength to do the right thing. Otherwise, the option is to print more money, and that just fudges the issue. It's denial, it's distortion of the truth, it encourages the wrong people to thrive as well. So creates all kinds of
buying
problems.
Another bag of Coke and saying I'll stop when I've done that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's in a business context, but as you've just said, turning to alcohol, practically from a well-being perspective, is a well-proven option.
And it works.
It does. Term. Alcohol is a great drug, but the problem with alcohol is you just need more and more of it to stay on the. So there's a bit of a catch with all of these things. They don't work long term. They don't sort anything out. But I think that's the sort of problem we've got, and that's the sort of strength we need to develop in our own way in terms of, and actually staying in that place as well to be relative. You talked about fear as well in your first introductory piece, and I think fear is a really big problem. The fear of inaction, the fear of keeping your head down is a real problem. So I think it's a time for strength, taking action, and that becomes self-fulfilling, I think, as well. As long as you're doing the right things, it becomes self-fulfilling. I also think it's a bit of an investment as well. Although I'd like to see a bit more return from my investment at the moment. But I think it's a
that's where faith comes in.
Yeah,
I hear you. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah,
same circumstance.
But it can only be a good thing to do the right thing. It can only be a good thing. It can only be an investment. And so I think I personally don't have any other option apart from to try and do the right thing.
Look, I came across a great scripture. I can't read it because I'm walking past the traffic lights, but I'm pretty sure it was Luke 13:23, and I'm paraphrasing now. See if you can bring it up. But I think it said, for the wise man, if he hears the word in reading your Bible, then he will have a harvest that is 30, 60, 100 times of what it should be.
Yeah.
Something along the lines. And so that's a promise from God.
Yeah.
That if you keep your focus on him and his direction and his guidance, and walk in his path, then your reward will be exponential.
Yeah.
And he's not just and he's not for the cynics out there. He's not just talking about once you get post pearly gate. It's like, there are blessings in this life to walking with the Lord.
Yeah, no, I think that's
exponential blessings.
No, I totally agree. And I think, I think on that point, probably the least happy people are the people with the most wealth at the moment.
I think
the other point as well, which I picked up over the last few days, is that, in terms of what you just described, what does good look like? There's a real disparity, I think, in terms of what does good look like. Because the economy and a lot of business is grown, as you rightly say, based on envy. This, and actually the interesting thing is, if you look at the Rockefellers in the 1920s or whenever they were, seriously rich people who had far less than what we've got now. If you take you and I, we have more, Paul, financially to our fingertips, more gadgets, central heating, whatever it might be.
We live better than European royalty 100 years ago.
I know. And so we should be happy, but actually, no, the reason why we aren't happy is because of envy, because, well, a lot of people aren't happy. So envy is a really big problem. This sort of, I want more thing, just really, really toxic. So rooting that
envy
out
and ingratitude.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And that's why whenever I, if I'm feeling boisterous, whenever I see secular people or atheists saying, "Oh, I'm so grateful," I go, "Who are you grateful to?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's I mean, that's another gift from God, to appreciate what you've got. So it's another one of Jesus's teachings. So without appreciating what you've got, you were talking about that before. When you talk about praise, I think as well, if you walk around with your eyes open with the right spiritual heart, you actually have plenty of things to praise for. So if you consider the environment you're in, Paul, you've got all kinds of wonderful things. And the question is, do we see that, or do we see something else?
Yeah, absolutely. And worship as well. I mean, let's just quickly throw that in there. Worship is, this is something I only learned in the last couple of years. Worship is a weapon.
Yeah.
Worship is like the nuclear warhead in the spiritual warfare arsenal.
Yeah.
It's what absolutely nixes the devil.
Absolutely.
And if you do worship, then you'll naturally fall into that realm of perspective that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
King David thinks about it. He's like, when he was feeling down, he would preach to his feelings. Joyce Meyer says, "Preach to yourself." I love that. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing. It's like demons can't get in your head, but they can influence your feelings.
Yeah.
So I can notice my thoughts, but over the last couple of weeks, I've been really, really like, okay, it's not just what I think, it's my feel. How am I feeling? And if it's a fierce negative feeling, then I have to look to whether there's the spirit behind that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And frankly, whether there is or whether there isn't, the renouncing it doesn't do any harm.
Yeah, the solution's the same.
Yeah, the solution's the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, Paul,
and just to wrap this up in a bow, God, the spirit of fear is never from God.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's been said more times to humans by God and angels than anything else.
Yeah.
Fear not, do not be afraid. 365 times apparently.
I know. Well, that's real discernment, isn't it? That's a real, really, really. That's quite a long way into the Christian journey as well. That one. I mean, it's but I think it's a habit. I think you talked about habits earlier. I think that's about habit, and being aware of that. Paul, just really specific question. We talked a bit about what we're doing about the impending crisis with gas and all the rest of it. What's going on? Can I ask you a specific question in terms of, in your world, whatever that looks like? Do you have any specific actions to try and help and support people through that crisis? What are you doing about that? Do you have any specific plan?
Not really. I mean, the thing is, I'm looking as to whether I should buy flights for Bangkok after Liverpool in early November. And in terms of, no, I don't know. I just, if leaders want to fix their organizations, and if they want to fix their culture, then the best thing they can do is fix themselves. So I can help people on an individual basis.
Yeah.
That's all I can do at the moment. Work with individuals.
Yeah.
Work with CEOs, take them through the process, that gives them a shift in their identity.
Yeah.
So they can perform to a different level, and equip them with a founder story, with a creation myth, with a genesis to sort of like, you know, be more have a more powerful positioning in their market.
Yeah.
And so in a time like this, I mean, I guess the only thing is it's going to change my marketing, because fear and uncertainty is going up.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, because it's like it's been at record levels over the last 2 years anyway. But as you're right, this is going to make COVID look like you know, a Wednesday morning sniffle.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, that's. I think for me, I mean, having been through your program, I thank you for what you did to provide that clarity for me. I think it's very important, and I think you do it from a creative, but also a sound spiritual basis, and a real passion for the person you're working with. And I think, you know, so all credit. That is important for me. For me, when I play back what people say to me, I'm a team player, Paul, primarily. So what I do in business is I create productive relationships between people. And so what I'm doing about this is I'm running this program at Ashridge between CEOs, actually right at the top level. And I've got the confidence to do that because that's the sort of thing I do. So that's my focus is to take a lead on that and get these people together. But like you say, with everything that's going on, it's very difficult with the fear for people to actually see much further than the end of their nose, or, you know, what they're drinking tonight, or you know, or whatever it might be. So I think there is a real practical challenge, because fear creeps up on you, and it's escalating, and people are not aware of it. And I think you can see the fear in terms of blame, in terms of dialogue, in terms of breakdown of dialogue, breakdown of relationships. So I really do think,
and deterioration of just general behavior in general.
Yeah, and a lack of heart.
People become nasty.
Yeah, and I think and also selfishness as well, and envy, and all these things. So I think that's really what's on my heart. But I thank God for the strength for giving me the courage to do that. And it's by no means easy, but I'm really pleased with the feedback. And interesting enough as well, we've got some really, really exceptional, by getting the positioning right, Paul, with your help as well. We've got some you attract the right people to come along. So we've got the most extraordinary people coming along who come with an open heart, pretty much, a real passion to learn. And interesting enough, in fact, it's pretty much like a turnaround, actually. The people who say all the right things, who haven't got the humility, interesting enough, they're my peers in the sort of turnaround world, although I've got a very hardcore team that know what they're doing and got the right heart. They're actually falling by the wayside because their hubris and there is a real barrier for their to them actually moving forwards. It's amazing how stuck, you know, people are. So I think there's a different type of people, Paul, that are going to come to the fore to sort this mess out. And I think it's going to be people with a Christian heart, because the good news is I think good always wins over evil. We can be confident about that, but it's going to be a bumpy ride because there's some real headwinds. We've got crypto, big tech, WHO, WF, all these people doing exactly the opposite, having a severe effect on people's well-being and our children's well-being. So it does require real courage to step out into this. And actually, when you think about it, you know, in the context of postmodernism, most CEOs haven't even got the confidence to stick their head above the parapet to face and address that, let alone do anything really useful. So
look, I was talking to pastor of Hillsong here yesterday. We went and had lunch, and one of the Hillsong guys from London was there, and he was like, and he's a young guy, and he said, I think it might be the same, sort of like every, the young always sees the defects of the old always sees the defects of the young. And I'm going, yeah, I agree. So this time, we're no longer moving forward under Judeo-Christian values. We're now in a post-Christian world, all right? And that hasn't happened in the last 300-400 years.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, so this is scary.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
it's like, and half of those guys, it's like they half of them don't know what they believe, they don't know what they value, they're told what they, depending on who they are, they're told what they value by what to value either by social media or their kids.
Yeah.
And they just don't have the moral vocabulary.
Yeah, I know. It's really and I think that the outcome of that is very, very sad. It's a lot of mental illness, Paul.
Oh yeah, well,
I mean, really off the radar.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
two girls in my youngest girl's class committed suicide, Paul, because of identity-related politics stuff. It's a very real problem. It's a very, very, and I think it's utterly cruel to bring up kids in schools without faith. It's utterly cruel because they're given an impossible task to sort their lives out by themselves, and no one's ever managed to do that, Paul. No one's ever managed to create their own radar. And I've actually seen the headmistress at my daughter's, both of my daughters went to the same school. I went to go and see the headmaster and the headmistress 5 times to have these types of discussions with them. Unless they put faith at the centre of their school, they're creating an absolute nightmare for the kids. And it's very, very sad. Not even to give an inkling in education, or not even a choice in education, Paul, for what we're talking about. There's not even an inroad. There's not even an awareness. It's absolutely cruel in my view. So, we're not building up strong kids as a consequence. We're building up kids who are fearful of what they say, what they do.
Yeah.
Really
fearful,
difficult.
nihilistic. Perfect recruitment fodder for commies. Sadly.
Yeah. And I think the greatest lie as well, lastly, I'd just add, is that Christian faith is about freedom.
Yep.
It's about, taking action. The guy who got the biggest kicking from Jesus was the guy who buried his treasure.
Yep.
Like you were saying, it's a very imperfect
hidden
journey.
Lazy servant.
It's a very imperfect journey, Paul. But like you said before, it's about taking action, and that's what I'm sure what we should do. So, all credit to us just for a second.
Yeah. Have a bit of faith, a bit of boldness. I spoke to Pastor Tim. And that's the other thing. It's like, maybe, who knows? Maybe I overdo it, but I speak to, if ever I've got a chance to have a coffee, to spend time, to have a phone conversation with a senior spiritual leader, church, I do it. Yeah. I think that those, and I think CEOs could learn an incredible amount if they just went and talked to a few more ministers, priests, and pastors.
Yeah. No, I think it's I like to look at things from every which way possible, and I think for me, I don't come at Christian faith for some wishy-washy perspective. In fact, completely the opposite. I'm probably the biggest cynic, but I've found on my journey that it's not a nice to have. It's utterly essential.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and actually, the weirder things get on this earth, the more relevant it becomes. Because the Bible, yeah. Jesus led a very chaotic life. He didn't have a file of facts.
No. But he was never in a hurry. Did you notice that? Never in a hurry.
Yeah, exactly. But he also stopped, Paul. He stopped, and his day was hijacked. And I think the challenge is as well, how much time were we making for other people? Because Jesus always stopped for whoever needed help. And I think that's such an important thing to do. And it's actually something that when I walk around factories, I've done a lot of work in manufacturing. I've always, the guy on the shop floor who's got a problem with his tool or whatever he's trying to do, I always grab hold of the engineer as the boss and say, look, come and sort this out for this guy. Because it's so easy to walk past and let the poor guy struggle. So that's a great conversation, Paul. Thank you for that. I feel we've that from a cold start. I think we've for me anyway, I found that conversation helpful. So thank you.
Amen.
Yeah. So I'll just switch this off, Paul, and let's just have another chat. Great to speak to you anyway.
Thanks.